So thank you everybody for coming to our Google Apps training series, working with Google Docs. I kind of had a revelation a few weeks ago that we needed to break down into the simpler apps and just make things a little simpler with the Google Apps. We've covered the 10,000 foot view pretty well, all the apps, navigating, sort of Gmail. And we've only been using this for about a year now. I think people's adoption has been pretty good. So now I want to really start getting into some of the specific apps and do a training for Google Docs like you might learn Google or Microsoft Word or Excel. So this is just the beginning of the training series. We'll probably do one on Sheets, on Forms, on the Notes, and the different apps that Google has to offer. So if you have any questions at any point, just go ahead and ask, and we'll try and answer it. And then at the end, we'll do some question and answer. So real basically, I thought this would be helpful. Everybody's been pretty familiar with the Microsoft suite of products most of your working life. That's pretty much what you've learned, what you know. And I think it's going to be useful to show how the Google apps sort of translate into the apps that you know. So this is what I call a Microsoft to Google translation. So very basically, everybody's familiar with Microsoft Windows. Windows is an operating system. So when you turn your computer on and you get the square box that looks like a window, and you move your mouse around, and you've got your start button, and you've got your desktop, and you've got all those things. Those are part of the operating system. Really, it's what talks to all your programs, it talks to your hardware. It's the interface you use to do your work. Everybody's familiar with that. That's really all you need to know about it. In the old days, before Windows, I'm sure some of you remember the old DOS days. Well, that was an operating system too. You just had to know everything and type in commands to get it to do what you wanted. So it was a little less user-friendly than the Windows interface. Same idea, though. It's really how you do your work. Well, for our purposes, Google Chrome is also an operating system. This is the way computing is going. It's a web browser, but eventually the Chrome will become your operating system. So some of you may have Chromebooks or Chrome devices. On those, Chrome is the operating system. There's no Windows, there's nothing else. And so what that really means is almost everything that we do on a computer will be done in the browser. So where we use Windows primarily still, because we have some applications that don't run in Chrome, or we have other things that we need Windows for still. When you fire up Chrome, it's almost like you're putting a skin on top of your operating system, and you're in its own operating system. And you'll see, I think a lot of you, I know I do personally, I probably do 90+% of my work directly in Chrome. The only time I leave Chrome is if I have to open a Word document, or I have to do like Munis, or I have to do something that's not browser friendly. But I think you'll find at home, you're almost exclusively in Chrome or in your web browser during your work, because almost everything you need to do is in your browser now. Your email, some documents, web pages you visit, banking, etc. So that's its own operating system. And it does a lot of the same things that an operating system does. It opens programs. You're going to browse and navigate your files. You're going to print. You're going to search. You're going to do all those things. Now, the advantage and the benefit of Chrome versus Windows is Chrome is what we say is in the cloud. And all that really means is you can get to it anywhere you have an internet connection. So any device that you have an internet connection on, whether it be your smartphone or a tablet, you can get to Chrome and have all your stuff. Whereas obviously with Windows or with your desktop or laptop, you have to have that specific device and have access to it in order to get to your stuff. All right, is everybody good? Any questions? So the next piece is, I was thinking that one of the things that people know about their operating system and the systems they're familiar with is where things are and sort of roughly where to go to get what they need. So for example, everybody's familiar with the start button, right? In Windows, it's the lower left hand of your computer. You click it, and that's going to show you all of the different applications that are on your computer. So generally, you could have different types of apps. You're going to have maybe your word processing, through Word. You could have your Excel, like your calculator. You might have your files and folders. That's where you're going to go to launch other programs and do your stuff. So in Chrome, and specifically in our Google Apps, everybody hopefully is familiar with the little grid that you see. So I want you to think, whenever you see a grid in Google Chrome or Google World, think of that as a start button. Whenever you see a grid, that's an indication that there's more there. When I click that, it's going to list for me similar apps. So you'll see that I've got my Gmail, which would be like opening Outlook. I've got, Drive, which is like opening my documents. I've got my contacts. I've got my calendar. Those are, in the modern world, we kind of call them apps, but they're really just programs. An app is really just a program that runs in a browser, in a web. Everyone is very familiar with their desktop in Windows, and most people have the very bad habit of saving everything directly to their desktop, which is the worst place that you can save it, because then, one, if your computer dies, it's gone, it's not backed up, it's not organized, and more importantly, for our purposes now, it's locked on that computer. So if you have a file sitting on your desktop and you're in another building, or you're at home, or you're on vacation, and you really need to get to something, you're out of luck, right? In Chrome, I think the good parallel is everyone's familiar with their bookmarks and their little apps up there. So if you think about it, really, the things you put on your desktop, the little shortcuts on your desktop, are just that. They are shortcuts to something else. So a lot of people would put a shortcut to a document. They'll put a shortcut to an application. They'll put a shortcut to a folder. Well, your web shortcuts are basically the same thing. And because everything you're going to do in your browser now has its own address, so if I'm working on, say, a Google Doc, well, guess what I can do? I can make a shortcut in my address bar to that document, and I can organize that just like I would on my desktop. Your apps and things are sort of like shortcuts to your most commonly used, to your favorite program. So even though I could click on the Start button and go to Microsoft Word, because I use it so much, I've got a shortcut on my desktop, and I want to be able to get to it quickly. Well, that's where your apps and your shortcuts come in the browser as well. It's just a way of customizing it and making it a little more convenient for you to use. This isn't super important, but I'm a little OCD, so I just wanted to show every relationship. On your computer, you've got your control panel. Most people here aren't going into their control panel a lot, but that's where you would tweak your font settings or your print settings or that type of stuff. Generally, the IT office would help you with that. In Chrome, if you click on the three little dots in the upper right-hand corner, that's where you're going to control a lot of the settings for Chrome, where things download, what your font size is, how you print, etc. So that's really just, because it's an operating system, it's more than just preferences for a browser. It's really controlling the way your computer works in a lot of ways, because more is happening there. This is the big one, and this is leading up to what we're going to go over today with Google Docs. Everyone's familiar with their My Documents folder, right? If you're not putting stuff on your desktop, generally that's where people are storing things. Here, for the long time, everybody had their X drive, which was on the network, right? So it wasn't on your computer. You simply had a mapping from the network to your computer. So really, that was like the cloud, because that folder wasn't on your computer. It was on one of our servers, and you accessed it via your computer. All the cloud is, when we get to Google, is that same concept, except instead of going over our network to our server, you're going over the internet to a secure server hosted in Google's thousands or millions of servers out there and accessing your stuff. But the concept is the same. Your computer is a way of getting to that folder. The other thing I wanted to make really clear, and it seems very simple, but Google Drive is not Google Docs. So a lot of times people use these words interchangeably. So when you're saying Google Drive, I want you to think about My Documents. It's a folder, it's a container. And so the way Google Drive works is just like your My Document folder. It starts out that only you have access to it. It's like your personal secure folder linked to your secure Google account. You can store anything you want in there. It doesn't have to be a Google Doc. You can have Word documents, you can have Excel documents, you can have PowerPoint, you can have pictures, you can have video, you can have Google Docs. Just like you could put anything in the My Documents folder, different file types, you can store different file types in Google Drive. And we're not going to get too much into it today, but most of you also have seen the Windows application for the Google Drive Sync. And if you don't have it, just let us know and we'll get you set up. But basically what that does is it puts a Windows folder on your local computer called Google Drive that's synced up with the cloud that lets you work with your stuff in Google Drive as if it were a local folder. It stays in sync. So if you open a Word file and save it back, it syncs up to the cloud. The advantage of that is it kind of splits the difference. It lets you work with the programs you're familiar with and you use the Windows file management and the things, which quite honestly, if you're doing a lot of file management, creating a lot of files, renaming, moving stuff, is easier than using the web interface. The web interface has its pros and cons. I find if I'm doing a lot of file management, it's easier for me to do it in Windows. The advantage, though, is by storing stuff in Google Drive, it's backed up into the cloud. And it's accessible to me wherever I go securely with my credentials. So again, if I'm on my phone or my tablet or I'm at home, because more and more we're working mobily, right? We've got boards and committees we work with that we need to share things with who don't have town offices. We travel between the buildings in the town. We're on Wi-Fi, we're on tablets, we're on Chromebooks, we're on laptops. That's very difficult to maintain access to your documents that way. By storing everything in Google Drive, no matter where you go, your stuff is there and you can access it. Now, depending on the format, so for example, and this is where we'll see some of the advantages of using the Google Doc format. If I had something in Word and I needed to edit it, it's going to be difficult on my phone because it's not designed to do that very well. There are some editors, but they don't really do a good job. So mainly, I'm going to be able to view it, preview it, share it, send it to other people, etc. I'm not necessarily going to edit it. Whereas if we start getting into the Google Doc format, you're going to see some of the advantages that you're not chained by having a specific application anymore. Okay, but you've got the flexibility to do it either way now. But I really want to stress the point because I hear people use Drive and Docs interchangeably. Google Docs, Google Drive, etc. Usually with I hate Google Docs. I see people, the first thing they'll say to me is I hate Google Docs. But what they might mean is Drive or something else. So this is really getting really basic today. So if you take nothing else away from this class, this Google Drive is a folder. That's all it is. It's a container where you store stuff that you can sync to your computer, but it's really backed up in the cloud. So you can interact with it through your Chrome browser operating system. Okay. So we've gone in depth about Gmail, but really people were familiar with Outlook, right? So there's not just sort of one equivalent for Outlook because Outlook did quite a few things. So really, between Gmail and Google Groups and Google Keep, which is for notes, which we'll get into at a later date, your contacts, your calendar, all are applications that replace Outlook. Now, again, the advantage is you don't have to be at a specific computer. Remember when you had Outlook, unless you used the horrible web interface, which nobody really used, and it was really hard to use. And if you needed to, and the searching was terrible if you weren't at your device. If you needed an email, you had to be at your computer to access things pretty well. With Gmail, you can be anywhere. You can be on your phone. And if you've ever tried it, if you go and search for an email from 2 years ago on your phone, it comes right up. You're walking around with everything right here. And more importantly, it's more secure because you're accessing it on here, but it's not really here. It's in the cloud securely. So if you were to lose your phone or your tablet or another device, no problem. We just lock it, wipe it, all your stuff's secure, and this is a brick. But we've gone into that in pretty good detail. Here's the big one. Microsoft Word, right? Everyone's favorite word processing program. Microsoft Word is equivalent to Google Docs. So Google Docs is a word processing application. That's really all it is. So some of you here may be old enough to remember like Works or WordPerfect or some of these other applications. So when you think about it, that's the only difference. So if you have different file types, if I'm on my computer, I can't open a Word document with an Excel sheet. You're going to use the right application for the right thing. People are comfortable, we're familiar with Word. The bad news is Microsoft is really trying to catch up to Google. So they're going in the Google direction very fast. So the Word you love and know is going to go away anyway because Microsoft is trying to become more cloud-based. So that familiarity, unfortunately, is not going to be around forever. So if you've noticed, they've been more aggressively. If you look at the newer versions of Word, they're more and more different than the versions people know. What's that? I'm making you feel better. But if you understand the concepts of a word processing program, you know that they're all basically going to do the same thing. I'm going to make a new file, or I'm going to open an existing file. I'm going to pick my font, my orientation, my spacing, my colors, all that stuff. And I will admit that when it comes down to some of the finer points of making a document look pretty, Word probably has more features like that. But we live in a different world. When you're composing a document, you're not in control of how the person on the other end is going to view that document anymore. We're not in the days where you basically use Word as a fancy word processor, type something and print it out and give someone a form letter that you can control how that's going to look. That person could view your document on their tiny little phone. They could view it on their 60-inch flat screen TV. They could view it on their Chromebook. They could view it on their tablet. And so the modern word processing programs, and more often than not, they're probably going to be looking at it on a web page. Especially if you're doing something that's designed for web consumption, they're going to be looking at it on a web page. And again, you don't know how they're going to be interacting with that web page, because not everyone's sitting in front of their 19-inch computer screen anymore. So they could have, like Andrew's got his TV on his wall that he views things on now. You could be at home, you could be on your tablet. And so the modern applications like Google Docs gives you some formatting options, but the thing is, it's smart. So no matter what end product you're viewing it on, it looks good. That's why there are no fixed fonts anymore. There are no, or it eliminates fonts that don't translate well. It scales. So no matter how you're viewing it on the web, on a tablet, on a TV, it's going to look good, and you don't have to do anything about it. So really what I stress with creating modern documents is that they're simple, clean looking, and the information is clear. Because the formatting really doesn't matter as much, because what people really want now is they want the information as fast as they can and as accurately as they can. And that's where Google Docs is superior to Word in a lot of ways, in that a lot of times you are live collaborating with information with your team, as opposed to the old days of creating a Word document, emailing out 5 copies of it, waiting for the 5 copies to come back, making your changes, emailing out the second version, getting those back. And by the end, you could have 2,000 versions of that document and nobody sure is what's what. So in Google Docs, you're also going to have one version of a document that you can control from beginning to end. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But very simply, so when you think of Word versus Google Docs, it's nothing other than a different word processing program. It's nothing magic. It's nothing strange. And quite honestly, if you have a lot of stuff in Word, keep using Word to edit those documents. If you've got something very complicated or a policy or something that's hundreds of pages, a lot of times it's easier just to keep that in Word. Now, sometimes you may have something that there's a value to converting to Google Docs, and they've gotten way better. So if you have an existing Word document, you can do a pretty good job converting that to Google Docs and have it look the same. A lot of times it requires a little bit of cleanup, but if it's worth it, then you only have to do that once, and now you've got a more powerful document. But conversely, if you, or if I'm starting a new document, why not start it in Google Docs? You're starting from zero. It's more flexible. You've got some control, and you can always put it back into Word later if you want, but you've got that option. And again, one of the advantages with working in Google Docs is, even though it's a different application, the application runs inside your Chrome browser. So you don't have to have a special application installed on a computer in order to access or edit that document. You could be on a tablet, on an iPhone, on a iPad, on an Android, on a Chromebook, on Windows, on your phone, and still be able to edit that document. Whereas with Word, you have to have Word, and in some cases, the right version of Word. If you have one that's too old or too new, sometimes that doesn't work. So that's just an advantage there. So I'm just going to skim over these really quickly. These will be for another topic, but if you continue down that logic, Excel is sheets. And there are some differences between Excel and Sheets when you get into formulas, so that's like a class for another day. But if you're doing basic, you just need rows and columns, Sheets is pretty useful, and there's some cool features there. PowerPoint is slides. I will say, so this is done in Slides, that hands down, Slides blows PowerPoint away. It just looks better, it's easier to use, it translates. I will find, for whatever reason, it has one of the worst PowerPoint to slide translators. If you have a PowerPoint it's not even worth trying to move it to slides because it's just not, it's going to mangle it. If you have slides, it goes perfectly to PowerPoint. That's one thing I find consistently is if you have a Google format, doc, sheet, slide, it'll go 100% perfect into Microsoft. Microsoft to Google is anywhere from 80 to 95%. Just the way it is. This is a little deeper, but Microsoft Access, we have Google Forms that can do some of that functionality. It's really forms and sheets and some other things, but if you're interested. And then this is a little more nuanced, but if you guys are familiar with Publisher, there's really no equivalent to Publisher in Google Docs, but what they do have is some pretty rich template galleries. So if you're looking to do a newsletter or a timesheet or something like that, you're going to find some interesting templates. We're going to get into that a little bit today. You're probably not going to use this, but if anybody remembers Front Page for editing, web pages, we have Google Sites for building mainly internal, like our staff portals and things we do in Google Sites. There's some nice integration. We find that the Google Sites is not quite robust enough to make the public-facing sites. And then if you're ever bored, these are all the apps that you have access to in Google Apps that go way beyond anything. So if you ever click on your grid and you do the even more from Google, every single one of those applications in there you have access to through your town account, and you can explore at your leisure. But I wanted to show just you've got YouTube and Hangouts and all kinds of cool stuff. And if you guys, before I get into it, just to kind of show off a new product here, we launched the Google Cloud Search this week. I say Google launched it, and we told you about it. This is something I've been waiting for a long time with Google. It searches all your applications at the same time. So if you plug in, so again, I'll search for Andrew here. And you'll notice if I just start typing, it starts suggesting. If I'm searching for a person, I'm going to get their contact information. And then I'm going to get any spreadsheet, doc, email, calendar that I have in common with that person all in one place. I can also go, so if I go across, this is everything. I can just sort by mail. I can just sort by drive. Sites is searching those Google sites. So that may be useful if I'm interested in looking up, say I need help with Google Docs. And I click on Sites. It's going to show me on the staff portal any pages related to Google Docs. Searching that, any groups, and then using search tools, I can refine it by date, by who owns it, by type, etc. So it's a really powerful search available to you. Even if you're just searching in your Google inbox now, it doesn't search everything, but it will start returning your Google Drive results with your email. So there's I encourage people to definitely play with that. Okay, so let's dive into Docs. Any questions before we? Okay, so Google Docs or Google Drive. See, I made the same mistake here. So how did I get here? Well, I went to my grid and I went to Google Drive. So that again is the equivalent of doing start my documents, right? Now I'm in a folder. So very basically inside of Google Drive, and I could be using this on my computer if I had the Google Drive sync set up, it's going to be things that you should be familiar with. So I can do a new, and if I do new, that's going to let me do a new folder. It's going to let me upload a file. So if I wanted to take a document that was on my computer or whatever and upload it, put it in Drive, that's how I would get it in that way if I weren't using the Drive sync. I can upload a whole folder. So if I had 10,000 files in a folder that I wanted to get into my Google Drive, I can upload that. Now, for most people here, we've already, if not, we will be soon migrated your X Drive to your Google Drive. So that will be available on your desktop as a Google Drive folder, but you'll also have access to it in the cloud, and I'll show you some of the advantages when doing attachments and other things around that. I can also do a new Google Doc, do a new Google Sheet, a new slide, or if I go to More, there's my forms, and because it's Google, there's all kinds of cool apps that you can go find, CAD viewers and things like that that you can explore. So very similar to Windows, if I'm in a folder and I make a new folder, that folder is inside the other folder. So you can create subfolders. Very similar to Windows. If I want to organize, I can expand my drive over here, and I can take things and I can drag and drop them into other folders. So you don't have to use the kind of clunky browse. In a lot of places, there's like a reorganize where you can sort of drill down through your tree. You can do it that way. You'll see that once we get into the dock, but I can also drag and drop. Okay. The other advantage with using Drive is if you're familiar with, like how we have the X drive and the S drive, and the S drive is shared with people, but it's shared with people in a fixed way. So if you wanted to create a share, you were collaborating with your team with other people, you'd have to have IT set up a share to allow you to have a folder with people. Well, with Google Drive, you can share things amongst your coworkers on your own. And then you can decide if you're working on a project. So I know like Suzanne's been doing this a lot with some of the legal matters. And it just empowers you to collaborate without having to rely on IT to set things up for you on the fly. And everything's still secure and everything's still backed up. And then the way that works is if you're familiar with Windows, if I put a document or a folder inside a folder that's shared, it's going to have the same sharing as the parent folder. So if I'm sharing something with 3 people and I put a new document in there, it's going to be shared with the 3 people unless I tell it otherwise. So just be conscious of that as you share things, because sometimes people scare themselves where they, or we've had a few cases where someone has accidentally shared an entire folder. But the advantage of using Google Drive and sharing, again, versus attachment, are you can always fix it. So let's say I addressed an email, accidentally sent it to all users, and I attached something that I really shouldn't have sent to all users, and I hit send. There's no way to get that back. If I'm sharing something in Google Drive or Google Docs and I hit send, all I've sent to those people is a link to that folder or file. So if I say, oops, I don't want anyone to see that, I can simply go in and unshare that folder or file. And when people click that link, now I'm going to get a bunch of people emailing me saying, hey, I can't open the thing you sent me, but at least I can control it. So we'll get into that in a little bit more. But that's basically Google Drive. That's really all it is. It's a container. And what I recommend people do is, what I usually say is if you had bad habits on your Windows computer and you just stored everything willy-nilly, didn't name them correctly, didn't organize them correctly, you're going to have trouble with Google Drive because it's going to magnify that. You need to have good habits. Create folders that make sense, create structure that makes sense, name things the way they're supposed to be named, be organized, and you're generally going to be okay. One of the things that I remind people in Google is a lot of times, especially people that have been working in Office for a long time, is you remember the old days when you couldn't really have spaces or things in file names? So people will name things document _1 _1973 _ You don't have to name things like that anymore. In Google, name everything as if someone were going to be reading it. So if you're going to name a document, use capital letters where you want capital letters, use spaces, use plain language. Because when I go to search for that document now, I can search not only on the title, but on the contents if it's readable, but make it as if a person were reading it, not a computer. So we don't want to see, you notice how there's no underscores, no weird capitalization. It's just text, right the way you want people to search for it. That's kind of a freeing thing. Okay. So let's get into Docs itself a little bit, and then we'll talk about sharing. So if I'm inside Drive, how do I get to my Docs? Well, the good and the bad of Google is there's about a half a dozen ways of doing everything. And so you have to kind of pick the way that works best for you. And sometimes there's no wrong answer. But inside Drive, I could go down and I could say, I'm going to do a new doc. And in Cloud World, any place I see an arrow, that's an indication there's more there. So any place you see an arrow or a ... or a grid, that's usually an indication there's more there. So if I go and I hover over that arrow, it's going to give me an option. So I can either create a blank document or I can create a template, a document from a template. So that's kind of familiar if you've ever used Word. You can create a blank document or you can pick from templates. And just like Word or Office, we have 2 different types of templates. We have your generic templates. So Google has a library. You can pick from one of those existing ones, form letter, newsletter, etc. We can also make custom templates. So I think I made one for Steve for doing some minutes. So if you've got a document that you use over and over again, that's custom to North Andover, say minutes or agendas or something like that, I can make a template and put it in our gallery. And so when you're making a new document, you can pick from our template and you're sort of tearing off, and then you're saving and doing all of that. So if you have, as you start working with this and you want me to create a template for you, simply send me the document you want to be the basis. It can be in Word, and I'll make it a template and then show you how to access it. So that's a pretty powerful piece. Now, there's another way of getting to Google Docs, though. So think about it as if I did start my documents, went into my document folder, and then open something. Or, right-click New Word document. So that's kind of the equivalent of doing that. I went to the folder first. But I could also go right to Word, right? So I could go start my program's Word. So the equivalent of doing that is clicking on the grid and going right to Docs. So now you'll notice that I'm in the Docs interface. Think of this as being on the splash screen of Word. So I've got a few options. One, and most importantly, it's Google search. I have this bad habit too of poking, because Windows trains you to poke. You expand a folder and you drill down, because you could never find anything searching inside of Windows. This is what Google does best. If you're looking for something, don't poke around for it, search for it. 9 times out of 10, you're going to find it. You might have to refine your search a little bit. So always search first. You'll notice down here that I have my recent documents. So like when you open Word, what's it show you? All your recent documents. So Google's nice, and they're trying to play nice with Microsoft. So they're not just showing me Google Docs, they're showing me my Word files as well. So these are things in the family of docs. Now what will happen is if you open a Word doc, it's just going to give you a preview. You're not going to be able to edit it unless you either download it and work with it in Word, or open it through Google Drive on your desktop in Word, or convert it to a Google Doc. Otherwise, it's going to give you a preview. Briefly, we did have turned on, Google had a feature that allowed you to half edit Word documents in the browser. It sounded like a convenient thing, but it caused more trouble than good, because what it did, it was sort of give you half the capabilities of Google Docs in a Word document and made the document look terrible. So now we took that option away. So it's binary. You either work with it in Docs or you work with it in Office. There's no halfway. And the previews work pretty well now. So obviously, if you're working in Word, you have half of the benefits of Drive. You can still share it with people. You can still organize. You can still do all that stuff. You just don't have the ability to edit it in the browser. And we'll get into how to convert at the very end, because it's a little more advanced, Word documents to Google Docs and how that works. So I have the option. I can create a blank doc. Or if I click on the template gallery, it's going to give me, now they're not a lot right now, but you've got a good sampling of pretty attractive, modern looking templates that are available. So we can always take one of those and tweak it to be a little more custom for us, and then make that a custom template. Or we can take something that you have that you're using and make it a template for you. And then, so see where it says general, but then see where it says town of North Andover? What's that? You want it bigger? All right. There we go. See where it says town of North Andover? Well, there's that facility meeting minute template I made for Steve. He's got the honor of having the first and only template in our gallery. So just like a template in Word, if I click that, it doesn't change the template. It just creates a new document using that template, and the old template stays there. And you can see where it says submit a template. That's where you would basically upload your custom template. I think I have to approve it just so it's not, the Wild West, but it's pretty easy to get templates in there. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good. Do you have examples of what we use now that you can send me? Mm-hmm. I think that's a good idea. If you can send me a sampling, if you can send me some samples, you know what I'll do is if you send me some samples, I will basically send out like a which do you like to everybody, and we'll narrow it down, and then we'll have a training on how just to do the templates. Absolutely. I agree. And that'd be a good way to get people using this. So absolutely. Mm-hmm. I like it. So why don't we do this? And I think we'll take the same approach we've taken with some of our forms and permits. It's better to do them one at a time, build success, and then go on. If you can send me some examples of some simple ones, and then we'll get adoption for everybody on the simple one, and then we'll start adding because people already know that. But I think that's a great idea. And it really pushes the value now of having a central consolidated cloud-based document creation versus people having 400 different files on their My Documents drive that they pass on like a inheritance system down through the department. Or in some cases, the worst I've seen is there's no electronic copy at all. There's a folder in a file somewhere that when it gets low, they run more copies of. So we want to get away from that. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Or not print so much if we have better electronic documents and circulating it. Mm-hmm. Yes, because all of the major boards and committees have town Google accounts, and so they can have access to the tools that we have. So absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. You just share it. Yeah. Well, the way generally the templates, the way the templates work are the templates are global. So you would have a global template library. So anybody that has access to our system, obviously it's secure, you have to have a username and password, etc., has access to the template. The critical part is where they can put it. So if you wanted somebody to put something in an agenda folder on the website, they may not have access to that. They may do that through you, but that's where we get into some of the flexibility of it. But generally, it's like a well. Everyone has access to those tools. And then it's where they can put them or what they can do with them. That's where we can lock it down a little bit. But great, perfect. Is everybody feeling a little better about Google Docs and Drive? And like, this was helpful a little bit? Okay. You're keep an open mind. It's going to get good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a new blank document. Okay. So I'm going to hit blank here. Now that would have been the same result as if I went to Drive, new, doc, blank. Okay. So now this should look pretty familiar. It looks like old Word, really, right? Or WordPerfect even. So let's just go through the basics of this. So one of the things you'll notice that I'm still in my browser. And this is one of the things I covered because sometimes people get confused by this in Word. All of this up here is not Google Docs. This is just the parts of my browser. Now, one of the things that Google Docs does pretty well is when I'm opening a new app, it opens it in a new tab because it doesn't want to close what I'm doing now. But if I hit back, right, I don't want to do that because that's going to take me out of that document back into my folder, right? That's my browser. If I close this tab, it's closing that piece. So if I decided I'm here and I wanted to go to the town's website to look something up, I'm going to want to go and open a new tab and then browse, and then I can copy and paste. So one of the things I really like about working in the browser is the ability to multitask. So I can have at any point in time my inbox, my calendar, my drive, the town's website, a certain boom. And one of the things I hate about it is the ability to multitask. Because if you ever come to talk to me by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I have about 4,000 tabs open and I can't. Right. Except you didn't. because it's all saved, right? So I'll show you. So there's a couple things. So you can, within your Chrome settings, set it that if you close Chrome, when you open it again, it opens all the tabs that were open. So that's a little different topic, but we'll go over that. So you can basically say, restore the tabs that I had when I open it. So that's something. It's in your Chrome settings. Yeah, you can do that. And that's something I can help you with. The other thing is, because it's Google, if I was working on a document or an email it's still there because Google saves everything as you're working on it. So that's one of the advantages. How many people have been working on a Word document? They haven't saved in 30 minutes. Their computer freezes up. There's nothing we can do. You got to reboot and you've lost all that work. In Google, that's not going to happen because, as you'll notice, no, I haven't typed anything. As I type, it'll say all changes saved in Drive. My computer could catch on fire, burn up, and I could pick up my phone, and I'll show you that in a second, and literally pick up where I left off with the cursor sitting where it left off for everything. So your drafts, your documents, your sheets, etc. So we'll get into some of the advantages once we go through the basics, the value adds that get wrapped around it. But let's just go through the basics. But I always like to differentiate that your browser is still your browser. So all of this stuff up here is not part of Docs. So Docs begins really below that line. Okay. So in the very top left, right, I've got this thing, and if I click it, it's going to take me back to my sort of menu. That's like hitting home. Now, in that case, you notice it didn't save the document, and you know why? I didn't type a thing, right? So that's actually a good thing, because how many times if you have 4 copies of a blank document, there's absolutely nothing in. The minute I type a single character, even a space, it'll save it. But if I click on my grid here in Google Docs, you'll notice it's very similar to, say, the menu in Office. I can switch between Docs and Sheets and Slides. I can tweak my settings. I can jump to my Drive. I strongly recommend everybody to experiment and just poke at things and test the features. You really can't break anything inside Google Apps. You might be able to get your settings to a weird point, but nothing that we can't get back. One of the benefits of using Google Docs is the amount of support and documentation is unprecedented for what's available. And you'll notice even here that in a lot of Google apps, you'll see this question mark in the upper right-hand corner. If you click on that, it's going to give you training specific to where you are right now. If you're in Gmail, it's going to give you Gmail tips. If you're in Calendar, it's going to give you calendar tips. Definitely take advantage of that. My favorite learning tool is YouTube. You can go to YouTube and type in, how do I do this in Google Docs? And you'll get 100 videos of people step by step walking you through how to do it. And if you do it a lot, you'll find out which one are the better ones. You'll have your favorites, then you can subscribe to them. And then when there's a new video, you'll get a notification, etc. I mean, we're doing this on YouTube. So at the end of this, that's through our Google tools. Everyone who's not in the class today can experience and see what you guys are learning, because we're capturing it through our Google Apps account. So everybody here has the ability to make training videos. So if your department or a group of people are going to do a training or an in-service or do something, why not capture it? Put it on YouTube. We can make it private so that just our organization can access it. Do something once, have it forever, and then everyone coming in can have access to it. So that's kind of a powerful thing. If we're doing like ethics or conflict of interest or things like that, board things, why not capture it? Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so what we do, so I've had Christine make a couple of videos. She made the last Munis video that came out great if anybody watched it. What I like is you get a headset like this with the boom mic. And then, so I'm not recording my face because no one wants to look at me, but I'm recording my screen. So they're getting my voice and they're getting all the mouse clicks and the screenshot. So it even doesn't have to be an elaborate video. What I find works best, quite honestly, is this one's going to be really long. No one's going to watch this one because it's too long. Is a little 5-minute segment where you say, hello, I'm going to click here, I'm going to click here, I'm going to do this. Here's how you do a requisition in Munis. Here's how you do a new permit. People watch even 30 seconds, a minute. And then you put that in the can, And then you just got a series, and then just keep growing and growing and growing. So if anybody wants to do a training video, just contact IT and we'll set you up. Honestly, it's lazy. It's efficient. So why do something 10 times if you can do it once and record it? That's for the computers. It's all about efficiency. Okay. So let's get back to our task at hand here. So you'll notice it says untitled document. Well, I want a good document hygiene. Every document needs a title. So I'm going to call this, because I'm boring, test document. And the nice thing is, because this is Chrome, if I misspell document, it's going to underline it. So everything so a lot of people, there is a built-in spell checker in the docs, but the Chrome browser has a spell checker built into it. So let me just hopefully it doesn't make a liar out of me. Maybe it won't do it there. Does it? Sometimes there are weird places where it won't do it. I'm not sure why, but generally it'll underline it with a red squiggly. I'll do it down in the document. And then you can right click just like you would in Word and pick your dictionary, and you can train. So you know how in Word you can do add to dictionary? Well, you can do that in Chrome, and that follows you for every site you're on. So it's like a master. And if you sign into Chrome on another device, guess your dictionary comes with you. So that's the benefit of the cloud. I'm not sure why it didn't do it there, but so let's go over that. So test documents. You notice I use capitals for each letter because that's how I like it. I did a space. So now if I were to do a search, so if I were doing an agenda, I would do Board of Selectmen agenda and the date, because that's how someone's going to search for it. So next to that, I've got this little folder. And this is a little hard to see, but you'll notice a star right there. That is the same as in your inbox. It sort of favorites that document. And if I go to my drive, there's a category called starred, where it's going to show me my favorites. So it's kind of like just a way of doing favorites for your stuff. And we'll get into some of the things in Drive here in a little bit that confuse people. So that's just a quick way of making that document a favorite. You'll see there's a folder here. That's where I could organize that document. So this is where it's a little clunky. I can say move this item, and then I have to kind of navigate. You know, it's kind of like Windows when you do save as. You just have to browse to where you're going to put it. Keep in mind that if you put it in a shared folder, it'll be shared. But one of the nice things about Google, it'll warn you. It'll say, if you put this in this folder, it's going to be shared with these people. Are you sure you want to do that? So Google does a lot of hand-holding, you'll notice. If you're trying to do something, it warns you about what you're going to do. But I could also, once I create that test document, I could go back to Drive, and I could just drag it around as well. Or if I were using it on my computer in Windows, I could just go into my Drive folder and move it around as well. So you can actually use Windows to organize Drive documents, even though you don't open them there. Okay, so let's keep going across the top. This is comments. So if you're collaborating on a document, you may want to give people the ability to comment but not edit the document. So you can actually open it up, and people could go in and type in comments on that document without being able to change the document, which is a nice feature. Share is the most powerful aspect of Docs versus Word. So the way sharing works, and I always click on advanced. So see how it says private only I can access? So by default, any new documents or folders you create are private only to you. So I have a couple options. I can invite people by name. In order to invite somebody by name to a Google Drive folder, Google Doc, Google Sheet, any Google asset, they have to have a Google Apps account of some kind. They have to have a Gmail account, like a personal Gmail account. If they're another town that's using Google Apps, you can do it. It may not always be obvious because we're North Andover MA.gov. Unless you knew we use Google, you wouldn't know that we were Google. Any flavor of Google you can share specifically with the person. So this is the most secure way of sharing, obviously. And there are cool things. So I'm going to share this with Christine. And because Google's smart and I email Christine a lot, the minute I start typing, her name becomes at the top of the list. I could also share it with a group. So if you have a mail group in your contacts, or there's a global Google group, you could share a folder or file with a whole group of people, so it's more efficient. You don't have to add people one at a time. So I'm going to do that. And now I can decide what she can do. So I can decide, is she an editor? Is she a commenter? Or is she a viewer? Right? So I want her only to be able to see the document, or I only want her to be able to comment, or I want her to be able to edit, comment, and view. Okay. So see where it says notify people? I can add a little message. Christine, I'm sharing this document with you. It's due on this date, et cetera, and then she'll get an email with a link to that document. And we'll talk about the shared with me item in a second. It'll warn you if I uncheck it. When I go to send, it'll say basically it's shared with that person, but they're not going to know it's shared with them unless they go looking for it because you didn't notify them. So generally, if you're sharing something with somebody, you want to notify them. You could also send an email out to them separately from this, and we'll get into that. See down here where it says prevent editors from changing access and adding new people? So I could say, I want Christine to be able to edit this, but I don't want her to be able to give anyone else edit rights to it. That has to come from me. So otherwise, as an editor, she could share that further, right? But that locks that down. This is a really cool piece. Disable options to download, print, and copy for viewers. So let's say I wanted to share something with somebody, but I didn't want them to be able to copy text out of it. I didn't want them to be able to download it or print it. That basically locks it. The only way for them to get that would be to do a screenshot with their phone or with like a screenshot tool. So nothing's perfect, but that adds a little more security around that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save. And I'm not going to notify her. And it's going to warn me that if I skip sending, she won't know about it and I should send her an email. So now I'll see that Christine is added as a collaborator on that document. Tool here. See that little stopwatch? I can set an expiration date for Christine's access to that document. So I can say she has access for a week and then goes away. And I can say, oops, I didn't mean to make her an editor. I only want her to be able to view it. Right? Or oops, she shouldn't have access at all. Now she can't access the file anymore. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, so that's a little nuance that we'll get into. Now, that works if you're sharing with someone who uses Google. So the big question is, what if I need to share something with someone who doesn't use Google? So a lot of times we see this with like contractors or vendors or people, and it's a really useful tool and they don't use Google. So unfortunately, we have to do a slightly less secure, but still more secure than doing an attachment way of sharing that. So see where it says private only you can access? I can change that. So see, these are kind of little quick ways. So see where it says anyone at the town of North Andover with the link? So I can basically say now, anyone in this organization, if they have the link to that document, can view it. I don't have to go in one by one. I can say anyone in the town of North Andover can find that document. So if someone went into Drive and started searching as a North Andover employee, they might be able to find that document and then they could view it, edit it, etc. But let's say someone's on the outside. So generally what you're going to do is anyone with a link can view. There are some rare places where you may need someone to be able to edit something if you're doing a special type of collaboration. But now what's going to happen is, see this URL? That's like a key. You need that key to open that file. Now, of course, if I sent it to contractor A and he decides that contractor B should see it and he forwards that message to contractor B, they have the link, they could see the document. But what happens when you send someone an attachment? Exactly the same thing, except worse, because you have no control over that. I could share that, and a week later I could go in and say, you can't view it. You have to be a North Andover person to view it. That person could share that link all day long. They'll click it. They say, you're not allowed to view this document. So we're more protected. We have more document control. The other advantage is, let's do something simple like a new job posting, right? Or a policy change. So let's say HR sends out a new employee policy. They send it to all 200 employees. What are they going to send it as? A Word file or a PDF? So let's say 10 minutes later, there's a change to that policy, which happens sometimes. So what happens? All 200 people get version 2 of that policy, right? And then let's say that's a really bad day, and by the end of the day, you have 10 versions of that policy sent to you in your inbox, right? So 10 times 200, that means there are 2,000 copies of that policy in existence now. And not counting if people downloaded it to their computer, downloaded it so you could have thousands upon thousands of that one file. So now you get a new employee coming in, and you want to give them, right? So you have to go through all those versions. And what if you gave them the next to the last version, not the right version, right? And so let's say I do a policy. Let's say I do a Google Doc or even a PDF, and I share it with the whole organization. And 5 minutes later, I decide, oh, I need to update this. I update it. Everyone clicks on the link. They go back to that document. There's one version of the document. Everyone always has it. Someone starts 3 weeks later. You send them the link. They click on it. They get the latest version. If it's an important change and I need to let people know, I simply write an email and say, hey, I updated the policy. Make sure you review it. But I haven't created 2,000 versions of that document, right? Collaboration. So this is something that's unique to Google Docs. So let's say I have a Word document and I need to work with it. And this is something the legal does quite a bit. Let's say with 5 people. So I'm going to turn on track changes. I'm going to email out to the people I want. Because we're doing track changes, I almost have to maintain a chain of custody where I can only email it to one person at a time, get their changes, bring it back, send it to the next person. It's a never-ending piece. Using this, I could take that. I could share it with Christine. I could share it with whomever. Everybody makes their changes. It's keeping track changes separately for everybody. And then there's one document. And then we decide we want to publish it. So we simply take that finished document. We say anyone in North Andover can view. We publish it. The final and the most powerful aspect of this is public on the web. So a lot of times the life cycle of our documents is we take something that 1 or 2 people start out collaborating. It might be reviewed by a larger group. And then eventually we want it to put it on the website, put it right on the website. And if it's a Google Doc and I'll show you an example of this, and not a PDF or not a Word file, you can basically edit that document and edit the web page in real time. So there's no lag. It's fast, real-time information that everyone has access to without waiting for an attachment or without missing a version. We'll get into that. That was a bit rambling, so let's get back to some of the basics. Does everyone feel like they have a general sense of how the sharing works and the collaboration and that? And I'll show you kind of a neat little piece here. So I'm just going to hit done. So here's this test document that I created. So I'm going to jump in on my phone, and I'm going to go to my Google Drive app on my phone. And I'm going to do a search for test document. Make sure I'm in my right. So I was bad, and I named 2 documents test document, but I'm going to guess it's this one here. Okay, so now I see my name popped up, right? Now, if I were Christine, I would actually see, and there was actually a little chat screen we could go in and talk. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to say, right? I just edited the document, and it looks like, very simple. It optimizes it for my screen. It doesn't look like a miniature version of Microsoft Word. So let's say, I've seen the police use this to get like press releases and things out. Somebody's on the scene, they get their phone, they type it in, or they use the voice dictation to type in, because you can use voice dictation on your computer and your phone to talk to this thing. The chief gets it, he polishes it up, he sends it out. But that's pretty cool. So now if I go up here though, and I want to say, I want to see revision history, well, there's all the changes. It's color coded by person and date. So I can revert back to any other change. And by reverting back, I don't lose the current document. It simply becomes another version, and it just rolls. Okay. And again, so because I have control over this, I could say, well, that's great, but I don't need to know that. All right, so let's go along. So this should look familiar. You got file, just like you do in Word. And you're going to find some of the same stuff. So just like in Word, you know how there's different ways of doing things. There's a shortcut and there's the menu. It's really your choice. You'll also notice there's a lot of keyboard shortcuts. If you're a keyboard shortcut person, you can do a lot of this with keyboard shortcuts. So you got Control O for open and the different pieces. So yes, but it's not called Save As. I'll get there. That's one of the things that throws people. So you'll notice it says all changes saved. So if my computer died right now, I wouldn't have to worry about anything. I'd get on my phone, I'd finish the document, I'd meet the deadline. So let's go through File here. So Share, we just went over with Share. That does exactly the same thing. New, it's like doing new. So I could do a new document, a new spreadsheet, a new form. Rename, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? Renames the file. One of the neat things now is if you like to right-click, you can do a lot of right-click options right in your browser like you could in Windows. So if I'm browsing Drive and I see a document and I do right-click, I can do rename, I can do move, I can do share. Almost all the menu options are available from a right-click as they were on your computer. That's something that browsers couldn't do just a few years ago because right-click would just say back. But now it's like a little program inside your screen. So rename, I could rename it here, or I could simply rename it here. So brings me to another nice feature of Google Docs. You can rename and you can move a file or a folder in Google Docs without breaking the link. The link is permanent. So if I put something on the website or I shared something with somebody and then I renamed it or even put it in a different folder, the link is still the link to that document. Now the permissions may have changed. I may have broken the permissions, but I can fix that. So I don't have to worry that if I go in and I rename a file or reorganize a file that I'm going to break access to it, because every document and file has a unique URL right to it. So you asked about Save As. It's called Make a Copy. Because there is no Save As because you're always saving. So Make a Copy basically says, take this exactly as it is right now, make a copy, you rename it, you pick the folder, you pick the sharing, you've got a copy of the original state. Correct. It'll automatically be named copy of test document, and then you rename it. Yeah, so in that case, we do an actual template, which you would do new from template, pick it, and you're done. You don't have to do Save As because the template's unchanged. So that'd be a good place for a template. Yeah, cool. Move to, pretty self-explanatory. That does the same thing as clicking on that folder up there. Again, you can do that in Drive by moving it around. Move to trash, pretty easy, delete, right? So what'll happen is, you'll notice in Drive, you had a trash container. So if something gets put in trash, you can always go there and restore it. It's pretty easy. We did that, see revision history. You want to see all the different changes going back for that document. It'll highlight it. You can always pick and revert or copy and paste. You're not going to do language unless you really want to challenge yourself and do it in German or something. This is a very cool feature. Download as. If you really need to, not work in Google Docs anymore, you really want to get it in Word, or you want to make it a PDF, or you want to convert it, you can take that Google Doc that you've started and download it as a regular old file in any format that you want, right? So I can download it as a Word doc. I can download it as, if anyone's ever used OpenOffice, that's the OpenOffice equivalent. It's kind of an open source. I can download it as rich text. I can download it as a PDF. So if you're doing like a minutes or agendas and you want to, we always like PDFs as like when you're, so the good thing about Google is it's very fluid, but the bad thing is it's very fluid. So if you're doing something that you're done with, we'd like to make it a PDF. So you can kind of get in this circle where I make a Google Doc as an agenda or minutes. I do download as PDF. I browse to the Google Drive on my computer, so it's still stored in Drive as a PDF. I put it there, and I've updated it. Plain text, web page, you're not really going to do, and an EPUB, you're not really going to do. But if you're really dealing with someone, you know, say a vendor, somebody who's cranky, and they just hate Google Docs, they insist on Word, you can convert it to Word. And I'll show you an even slicker way of doing that. Publish to the web, we're not really going to get into. That's for some very specific applications. And quite honestly, generally what we're going to do is just do a link to the document, and they're going to see the document. You don't have to publish as a web page, etc. We'll get into that. Email collaborators. So this is useful, and unfortunately you can't do this on folders, you just have to do a regular email. But let's say you've got a team of people working on a document, and you just went in and made a ton of changes. I do email collaborators. It sends an email to all the people who that document is shared with, and I can write them a note. And that note will include a link back to the document. That's a useful tool. This is one of the most powerful ones. So email is attachment. What that's going to do is I can actually convert on the fly to any of those file formats and pick who I'm going to send it to. And it browses your contacts in the whole directory. So that I don't have to download it as a PDF. I literally say, I'm going to send that to Christine as a PDF. It converts it, sends her an email with the PDF attachment, and the doc stays there. That's a cool, if you want, that's a nice way, like if you're sending, if you did an agenda in Google Docs and you wanted to send it to the mail group as a PDF, you could actually put in all agendas there, convert it to a PDF. See where the subject is test document? If I had named that Board of Selectmen agenda date, that would automatically be the subject. I hit send, I'm done. More efficient. And I can also, if you're one of those paranoid types, you can send a copy to yourself to make sure it looks like the way you want. Now, I will say that one of the advantages of doing things in Google Docs and Drive is you're not restricted by file size limitations for attachments. So we have a 25 meg. If you were to attach a regular file attachment to an email and try to send it to someone, our system lets you do it up to 25. Some other systems restrict it as low as 10 or 5. Google Drive bypasses all of that because it's a link. So you could send a 5 gig folder full of pictures and videos to somebody through Google Drive and not hit any file size limitations. And you're not taking up space on other people's computers because you're simply sending a link back to the original file. Okay, so that's file. Document details is kind of nice. That's going to tell you who it's shared with, where it's located, last modified date, all that kind of stuff. So again, your best friend is just to create a document and go in and start exploring here. Page setup, if you've ever used Word, that's where you're going to set up your margins, your orientation, all that kind of stuff. And you can set defaults and your page color. That should look very familiar if you've ever done that in Word. You've got print. Pretty straightforward. So if I want to print, that's going to give me so that's our nice blank page there. But see where it says save as PDF? So one of the nice things with Chrome is everyone has a PDF printer built into Chrome. You can print anything on Chrome as a PDF. You'll also notice I can save it right to Drive, which already is in Drive, so it's kind of redundant. Or I can access any of my regular printers. Now, one of the other things, so let's change this to my, I don't think I even have any normal printers set up. But one of the options in Chrome generally is if you're printing to a standard printer, is there's a use local printer dialog box that lets you do those advanced things like collate, staple, and it sort of moves it to Windows to take care of that. But because this is Google Docs, we don't want to print. We want to keep everything in the cloud because printing is wasteful and inefficient. And so that's pretty much it. So you'll notice I can do a lot of those same things here. There's print, there's undo, there's my, oh, that's paint format. So this is kind of a cool feature. If you have an element of the document that you want to copy the formatting, you can select right click and do copy format, and then you can paste the format onto another element and make it look the same as the part you just did. Word has something similar to that. Obviously your zoom, right? Your style, so your titles and that kind of stuff. I'll show into how to build an automatic table of contents based on this, which is pretty neat. Your font, so it's got you can get more fonts. It's got a pretty robust font selection. Your font size, bold, italic, underline, text color, doing a hyperlink, so you highlight something, you hit the link, you paste the URL in, etc. One of the cool things is because this is Google, if you highlight something, it'll suggest links to it. That's a comment. So your alignment, left, center, justified, your spacing, numbers, bullets, indent, this clear formatting. So if you've ever like copied and pasted something from Word into something else, sometimes the formatting's not quite right. So they've got a couple options. One of the options I like is if you right click, you can select paste as plain text, which paints it with no formatting, just the native formatting. Or you can take something, highlight it, and hit that, and that makes it the default formatting. This is a neat tool. So see where it says editing? If you change that to suggesting, it's kind of like in track changes mode. So now you're going to type stuff. It's going to be in a different color with your initials. And then it's up to whoever's managing that document to either accept or reject those changes. You can also switch it over to viewing. So obviously, if you have view rights, this is all you would see anyway. But that, if you're editing it, you just want to see how someone might see it without the editing, that sort of shows it in final view. And that hides the bar. So under edit, you've got all your basic stuff, your undo, your redo, your cut, copy, paste, your paste without formatting. The web clipboard is just if you're like copying things from other pages. Your select all, your find and replace, all pretty basic stuff. Your insert. So if you want to insert the town seal, right, you want to put in a link. You can put in equations, which is a little advanced, but you can do some cool stuff with that if you want to explore it. You can insert a drawing where you can actually draw. You can do a chart. So if you've got like a sheet, you can take a chart and insert it from the sheet. You can do a table, and then so you can see I can pick how big I want my table to be, and I can change that. You can add a footnote. There's your special characters. So if you're doing like a scientific reference or something and you need your special characters, this is my horizontal line. I can insert page numbering. I can do a page count. I can insert a break. There's my header, my footer, and the table of contents. So the table of contents is pretty cool. So you noticed how we had our titles and our headings. Just like in Word, if you are good and you put your document in every heading or every title, you'll build an automatic table of contents. But because it's Google, it'll be a linked table of contents. So you'll actually have a table of contents that when you click on the headers, it brings you to that part in the document. That's a nice feature. No, it's not the way Word does. So there's ways of kind of cheating around that, but put it in the header or the footer, put an image or something like that, but it doesn't. It may come. That's one of those things that they just haven't gotten around to adding. So you got your formatting: bold, italic, underline, strike through, your font size, alignment. We've went over a lot of this. You got your tools. So that's where your manual spell check is. Okay, thanks. This is a really cool feature, Explore. This works really well in Sheets more. If you have rows and columns in an organized way in Sheets, it'll automatically recommend, say, charts for you. If you have text and you do Explore, it'll bring you insights from the web about what you're typing. It's kind of, you just have to kind of play with it. Define, if you don't know what something means, highlight it, you'll get the web definition for it. So keep in mind that this is Docs, but it's also everything that Google has to offer around it: searching, insights, other data, relationships. If you wanted to do a quick word count, they'll give you how many words are in your document, right? None of us are doing like essays anymore, but voice typing, if you have a microphone or you're on your phone, you can actually dictate and it'll type. So those of you doing minutes or transcriptions, it's kind of a cool little tool. It's actually really good. Translate, if you wanted to put the document in a different language, not that we're going to do it. Your preferences, that's your personal dictionary, right? There's your table tools. Your add-ons are one of the most powerful things you can do. So I was talking to Pam about this offline. I've got an Avery mail merge. I can make labels from this. I can do forms. In Google Sheets, have you ever wanted to do something in Excel complicated, like take two sheets and compare it to see where the duplicates are and get a list of duplicates, and it's hard to do in Excel? There's an app to do that in like a second in Google. There's all these add-ons that make it more powerful. We could spend a whole class just going over that. I just encourage you to explore, and if you get stuck, just ask me. And then, of course, you have your help, which is searchable, and plus all the other things that go along with help. So let me show you a couple of real-world practical examples of this. So as you know, we just recently took all of our web documents and put them in Google Drive to make it easier to manage. Most of those are in PDF format, but a few of them are in Google Doc format. So let me show you the advantage. So let me go over to the Board of Selectmen page here. So for those, let me zoom in. It's a nice picture of the selectmen. So a lot of you who work with boards and committees are familiar with the board wanting to publish a meeting schedule, a schedule of meetings. Perfect candidate for a Google Doc. because it's a living document. It changes a lot. People really only want the latest version of that. It's not historical like meeting minutes. You've already captured all that. So what's a typical way of updating that? Somebody writes a Word document, prints it as a PDF, sends it to IT. We upload it. 2 weeks later, they need to change it, go through the process. So you know what Lori does now? She goes to the public webpage. She clicks on meeting schedule. It's a Google Doc. She has rights to edit it. She goes in. She makes her changes. She's updated the webpage. There's no other process. Now, if I went in as a member of the public, I obviously would not have those rights because it's based on the Google account I'm already signed in with. So imagine that power for lots of other things on the website. Not good for minutes, not good for agendas, but if you have trick or treat hours, if you have the winter parking ban, if you have meeting minutes, if you have things that really what people want is up-to-date information. In DPW, we talk about like, road improvement lists or things where you just want up-to-date information. So instead of having 4 steps, there's 1. I'm done. And I could do that on my phone. I could go browse, edit that on my phone. I could be at home and do that. I don't need a special tool. I don't need Word. I don't need access to the web page. I just need access to that one document. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I did that from home. Yeah, that's part of the web page. Yeah. So as simple as it is, that is the power of Google Docs. And if you had multiple people collaborating on that, let's say 2 or 3 people do, it's not bottlenecked. So there's not one person who's on vacation. You need to have access to it. You can do it, or we can delegate. And it's also controlled. So you may have somebody who you don't want editing your whole web page in your department, but who maintains one document that lives on the web page. That person can, in effect, update the web page right in their own account. That's the power of Google Docs. Another powerful piece is, everyone's familiar with the staff portal now. If I click on phone directory and I open the offers, numbers, and extensions, well, guess what that is? It's a Google Sheet. So what was the old way? Every once in a while, someone would update it, circulate it, print it. The minute you print it, it's out of date, right? Whenever there's a new employee or a change, Christine's really good. She goes in, she updates it. Next time you click it, it's updated. It's always up to date. That's the power of the Google Docs. Always up to date. All right. So before I wrap up and get in, because I talked for a long time today, are there any general questions about Google Docs, formatting? Does everybody feel, in your homework now, is confident going and making a new document in Google Docs? Everybody feels like they could do that, share it, print it, save it, download it, whatever. So that's what your homework is to go and make a doc and play with it. Because one of the complaints I hear a lot of people is that they can't make their documents look as good as Word. And that's true and it's not true. Well, you may not have every single bell and whistle about formatting a document. You can still make some good looking documents. Just keep it simple. You can insert your pictures, you can justify things, you can wrap text around pictures, you can do bullets, you can do links. You may not be able to make it look exactly the same, but don't try to. Just make it look good. So generally what I find is people want simple, clean documents. Make it easy to understand, simple, yes. Yes. Yeah, you may have to play with it a little bit, but once it's there, and then we can make it a template. All right, so we'll wrap, and I'll just go over a couple of more advanced things here. So let me open up my inbox. Set up here. So let me open, so this is a good example. So Ray just sent me a new bid. Oh, and he was actually good and sent it in PDF. He normally sends it in Word. Let me search for the last 20 cent. Let's see. All right, so he sent me a Word file. So you guys have probably all seen this. You get an attachment as a Word file. So there's three things you can do with that. If I hover over it, you notice how these buttons light up down here? Okay. If I don't click on any of the buttons and I just click on the document, that's going to give me a preview of the document. That's it. Now, I can do some things here. I can print it. I can download it. I can get details on it here. I can add it to Drive as is, as just a Word file, right? See where it says open with? I can open it with Google Docs and convert it to a Google Doc. Now it will be in Google Doc format. If I want to open it in Word, what I'm going to need to do is download it and then open it, and it'll open in Word. And if I want to get back, I'm going to hit this arrow. Now I'm back in my inbox. If I click the arrow, that's just automatically going to download it. I'll go down the bottom of my Chrome, I open it, it opens in Word. I can still save it in Drive on my desktop or do any of those things I want to do. If I click the Drive button, that's just a shortcut to put it right in Drive as a Word file, just to store it. I may be on my tablet or something. I don't want to forget about it, etc. The little pencil is going to convert that into a Google Doc on the fly. Okay, so if I do that, it's going to take that Word document that Ray sent me, and now it's no longer a Word file, it's a Google Doc. And you notice it did a pretty good job. I mean, that's a pretty simple document, but it did a pretty good job. You're going to find that you're like between 95 and 99% accurate when you convert. And then cleaning up is trivial a lot of times. Sometimes we've seen with like employee manuals or things that are 500 pages long and have all kinds of, getting those converted is a nightmare. Stuff like this is super easy. I could share it back. I can do everything I could. It's now a Google Doc. If I'm in my Drive and I have something that's a a Word file, like, let's see if I can find one here. So you'll notice that the Google Docs have this and some of these have the W. So I can right click on that and I can do open with Google Docs and I can convert it. But you notice how it gave me the option to open it in Word on my desktop when I did that in Drive? That's a neat feature. There is a setting, and I don't recommend it, to automatically convert anything you upload to the Google format. Sometimes I'll tune that on for a purpose, and then I'll leave it on, and I'll start uploading everything, and I don't know why everything's in a Google Doc all of a sudden. But otherwise, what you're going to do is just put the Word in. You're going to right-click, open in Google Docs, edit it. Now you got both versions. You can delete the Word version if you want. That takes something in Word and gives you all the power of the Google Doc, and then we can make it a template, and then you're done. So because I'm nice, I'm not insisting that anybody use, docs for everything. Word is pretty good at what it does. It's kind of a pain to convert everything. I'm simply encouraging people that for new items, start in Docs. Why not? And you get all that. And if you do have that document that has a value in Docs, but it's in Word, take the time to convert it, and then you have it there forever. You only have to do it once, and you've got the benefit of doing that. And then we can explore. What's that? A whole folder? You want to convert them to Google Docs? You could. So what I would do in that case is I would, yes, I think you can. But what I would do in that case, I would do the settings and I would say auto convert, upload the folder, and then turn it off. And then you don't have to worry. It'll pull it in. It'll convert them all to Google Docs automatically. I think you can do a whole folder, but I'm not sure. Yeah, no, because the folder, you might be able to go in and like do a shift select and do, but it'll be more elegant to do with the auto convert, upload the folder, and then just remember to uncheck that when you're done, the auto conversion. I mean, it's not the end of the world because you still had the Word file you uploaded anyway. So worst case is you just delete the one you don't want and start over. Maybe, yeah. Yeah. Myself, I haven't made a new Word document in years. There's just for me, there's no need to. And there's more powerful to do the Google Doc and more flexible. And because everything's in my Drive, I never have to worry if I'm going to have access to something. Did I put something where I can get it? If I'm traveling, if I'm at home, I always know I can get to what I need. Mail merge. Okay, so that's a little more advanced. Let's see if we can do this here. So you'll notice, just like on your phone, you have to sign your soul away to open any app. But anything Google branded, there's no privacy in this stuff anyway. So Google basically owns. So this lets you do like address labels, but you don't necessarily have to. You can just do a. So this is basically doing a mail merge for certain labels, but I think you can do. I don't know if I have the one to do an actual one. Yeah, there is an add-on for it. Let's just take a look here. So mail merge contacts, mail merge your Google Documents to emails or letters from a Gmail contact group. Easily merge your Google Documents into emails or letters using data from a Google Sheet. So that one looks promising. This one actually looks pretty good. I always look at the ratings when I'm doing the apps, because the more stars, the better. Smart Sheet merge. So what I'd recommend is just book like half an hour with me, and I can come sit with you and we can pick the right program and do a little training. Or you can experiment with it. It's not hard. Once you get good at doing this stuff, you can start poking around, and like I said, you can't really break it. And worst case, if you put an app on and you don't like it, you can just uninstall it. My advice though is just, again, use the ratings and stick with the vendors you know. If something has 1 star, I probably wouldn't install it. And stay away from anything that says like coupons or any of those things. Generally, we're pretty safe from those. But yeah, you can do mail merges. You can do some pretty neat stuff. All right, so I think we covered quite a bit today. Does anybody have any questions? I'll be here after if you want to come up and look at something specifically. It automatically puts it in Google Docs. In the root is like in your My Drive folder, and then you can move it from there. Yeah. Yeah, so that's one. As you leave, that's one thing that people always ask, is the shared with me. So anybody can share anything with you in Drive, right? It doesn't automatically get added to My Drive. So when somebody shares something with you, and there's a reason for that, it's because anybody can share anything with you. And you sort of have to give it permission, like especially if you're syncing. If I have a 1 terabyte GIS folder and I share it with you and you decide you're going to put that in your drive, it's going to eat up your entire hard drive. You don't want to do that. So if somebody does share something with you, you're not stuck with it either. So I can go into shared with me, and I can click on something, and I can say remove. Now that doesn't delete it, because the owner I can see is this Joe Cross here. That just removes it from shared with me. I don't want to see it again. It goes back to the person who owns it. Or what I can say is I want to add that to my drive. Now it stays in the shared with me folder, but it also basically moves a shortcut to my drive. So now if I'm syncing with my computer, or if I'm searching my drive, it'll be there with my stuff. I can organize it. Correct. That's the beauty, is like, the cool thing with this is, like, if you're sharing something with people, you can actually organize it in different ways sometimes, and because the document has 1 link to it. So it's way more efficient than having multiple copies of stuff and linking to it. But that's something that confuses people. If you don't want something under the shared with me, just do remove. And then you won't see it anymore. But conversely, because of the nature of what we do, if someone went to the public website and they had Google, and they went to our documents, and they went to Google Drive, a member of the public could add our Drive documents to their Google Drive, read only, and they could search them like they would a Drive document in their thing with that very powerful Google search. Same with our calendars, all of that stuff. You can add it to your piece and have it view only. So now you don't have to go to the website. You can just have town documents in your personal drive. Read only. All right, and one parting thing, just to give people peace of mind. Occasionally, you may worry that something is public or something has too much access, or you've shared something that's public that people can't access. So what I like to do is I grab the URL of that file or folder up here, and this is one of the few good things that Internet Explorer is useful for. I'll open Internet Explorer, and I'll paste that URL in to Internet Explorer, and I can't access it because I'm never signed into Google Chrome. You can't sign into Google Chrome. I'm not signed into any account on Internet Explorer. That's what a non-signed in person would get. So that's just kind of a peace of mind thing that I do. Okay. Thank you. Okay.